Welcome, everyone. My name is Dan Osuski, and I'm the head of Standards and Insights here at B-Lab. I'm joined by my colleagues, Michelle Bradley and Charlie Frioli, members of our Insights team and co-authors of our new report entitled How Businesses Are Engaging, Performing, and Improving on the Sustainable Development Goals, Key Insights from the SDG Action Manager, which we are excited to provide a preview to you today. This report represents the first work product of B-Lab's new Insights team, which has the purpose of developing and leveraging data about the impact of B-Lab and the companies that we work with, not just to inform our own work, but to contribute to broader dialogues about the role and impact of business in society, including how we can partner with and create opportunities for broader research on these topics from academics and others. And so if you're listening to this video, you're probably already familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, which have been described as a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. A little over a year ago, in partnership with the UN Global Compact, B-Lab launched the SDG Action Manager, a web-based impact management solution that effectively translates the SDGs into concrete actions, indicators, and benchmarks that all businesses can use to contribute to the achievement of the SDGs by 2030. The report that we're previewing today is an analysis of the usage of that SDG Action Manager since its launch, as it is what we understand to be one of, if not the largest, most comprehensive, and practical data samples available to understand how businesses are engaging and performing on the SDGs. Especially in coordination with other surveys and samples conducted over the years, it creates the opportunity to understand not only where businesses might be excelling, but also where performance and focus might be lagging and where more work needs to be done. I'm pleased to hand it over to my colleagues to give you a preview of some of the key insights in the report in just a moment. But before I do, I'd like to provide a quick overview of the structure of the SDG Action Manager and the report itself. The SDG Action Manager is organized into 17 modules, representing a required baseline that provides a general introduction with a focus on the UN Global Compact 10 principles, followed by 16 modules focused on the individual SDGs that are recommended but not required for a user to complete based on their industry. Each module includes indicators related to business best practices, broken down by questions about a company's business model, internal operations, supply chain, and collective action, and negative impact risk. Companies are scored for each module and section to allow for benchmarking. And for each individual indicator, companies are able to set improvement goals to identify and track their improvements over time. This structure of the SDG Action Manager allows us to identify what SDGs companies feel are most important for them, how they are actually performing on those SDGs, and where they are most likely to focus their efforts on improvement, which are the main themes focused on in this report. Each report section features a variety of data visualizations and insights that break down various themes across and within the SDGs, including regional and sectoral variances where appropriate. The report also includes snapshot sections that dive deeper into SDG 5 on gender equality and SDG 13 on climate action, along with a concluding section that emphasizes important takeaways and next steps on how to accelerate the contributions of business to the SDGs in this pivotal next decade. This is, again, intended to be a preview, so we'd encourage you to access the report itself to learn more. And with that, I'd like to hand things over to Michelle to share some more info about our data methodology and then the first round of insights that we've been able to gather.
Thanks, Dan. So since the SDG Action Manager launched in January 2020, more than 15,000 companies have interacted with it in some way. That might mean a company answered a few questions, they set a goal for improvement, or they simply signed up. For the purpose of our research, we focused on data from the most engaged subset of users, the 1,700 companies that completed the introductory baseline module and at least one SDG-specific module. This was done to increase our confidence in our dataset and ensure that the companies we reported on demonstrated clear participation with the SDG Action Manager. These companies are of various sizes, located around the world, and are in a range of industries. However, as you can see in these pie charts, there is a high representation of companies located in Europe. They have 1 to 9 employees, and they're in the service industry. We call this out to be transparent about some of the limitations of this data set, which include the fact that the data is self-reported by companies and also contains a selection bias in the user base compared to all businesses globally. We have taken this into account in part by disaggregating data when appropriate to reveal the differences in companies based on their industry, location, and size. We believe this data nonetheless provides powerful insights and a unique window into understanding how companies are interacting with the Sustainable Development Goals. With that, let's delve deeper into the key insights of this insight report, starting with engagement. Our team has found that after completing the baseline, a company is most likely to engage most on Goal 1, no poverty, Goal 8, decent work and economic growth, and/or Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. On the other hand, a company is least likely to engage on Goal 4, quality education, Goal 14, life below water, and/or Goal 15, life on land. But these trends are not present everywhere. For example, Goal 1, no poverty, is the most prioritized SDG for companies operating in much of the global south, like in Latin America and Africa. However, a notable exception are the Arab states, where the most prioritized SDG is SDG 7, affordable and clean energy. In contrast, the most prioritized SDG in the global north is Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. By design, the SDGs are interconnected and holistic, and a company can choose to prioritize one or many goals in the SDG Action Manager. Finding this balance of breadth and depth is necessary for a company to meaningfully advance the Sustainable Development Goals. Our data has found that most companies will complete one SDG, while on average, a company will complete about 7. Looking at this graph, you can see that a significant number of companies determined that they would take a comprehensive approach and prioritize nearly all of them. Now to pass it over to Charlie, who will speak more about how companies are performing and improving in these SDGs.
Thank you, Michelle. So building off the engagement analysis, companies that have prioritized one or several of the global goals in the SDG Action Manager can be further analyzed based on their self-reported performance on that goal. We know that all companies have an impact on the SDGs, whether that's good or bad, intentional or unintentional. The SDG Action Manager evaluates a company's practices and indicators relevant to a particular SDG in order to assess a company's current performance, both positive and negative. To measure a company's positive impact, the SDG Action Manager scores a company's performance where higher values indicate more positive contributions towards that global goal. So according to our performance analysis, companies are contributing the most to Goal 1, no poverty, Goal 4, quality education, Goal 12, responsible production and consumption, and Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. These had the highest average performance across all of the SDGs. And on the other hand, companies were contributing the least to Goal 14, life below water, Goal 6, clean water and sanitation, and Goal 7, affordable and clean energy. We can also break performance down even further into the 4 subsections that correspond to different aspects of a business that can contribute to the SDGs. And those are internal operations, business models, supply chains, and collective action. There are various reports out there about the SDGs that have found that business action tends to focus on internal operations. One of the most interesting findings from the SDG Action Manager is that real company performance seems to align with these findings as well. Companies are performing best in the internal operations subsection when compared to those other 3, business model, supply chain, and collective action. And while these latter 3 are more challenging for a company to manage and shift, they're also the aspects of a business that are most likely to drive the acceleration and transformation needed to achieve the SDGs at a systemic level. A company's negative impact on the SDGs is measured slightly differently. Instead of a numeric score, a company's responses are evaluated to arrive at a flag rating of green, yellow, orange, or red, each indicating a different level of risk that that company might have material negative impacts on achieving a particular SDG. A majority of companies have a green flag, which indicates that they report having minimal risk towards negative contributions to the SDGs. This could be a result of various factors, including the types of companies included in the sample. But interestingly, this aligns with other findings that are out there that companies are more likely to identify positive SDG impacts rather than identifying their negative ones. When we dive into the specific SDGs, we find that Goal 5, gender equality, Goal 8, decent work and economic growth, Goal 13, climate action, and Goal 15, life on land, had the highest reported risk of negative business impact. You might notice that Goal 8 features as both one of the highest performing SDGs in terms of positive contributions, as well as one of the highest in potential negative contributions. And I think this demonstrates the importance of having these different approaches to measuring positive and negative impacts. If we were to score a company's positive and negative impacts together, a company's positive contributions towards a goal might cancel out their negative impacts, when in reality, it's important to recognize that businesses can simultaneously be contributing towards a goal with their best practices and at the same time have material negative impacts that they need to be effectively managing and addressing. The full report breaks down company performance even further. So we look at trends by region and by sector, as well as identifying where high performance on an SDG tends to be correlated with high or low performance in other SDGs. We've looked at where companies are prioritizing their efforts to achieve the SDGs and also how well they're currently performing. Another element of the report is looking at companies' ambitions to improve, which we can analyze based on the data from the goal setting functionality in the SDG Action Manager. This allows companies to set and track improvement goals on each indicator. And our report uses this data to look at how many companies are setting improvement goals and where those goals tend to be focused. On the whole, many companies that chose to engage in an SDG or in several SDGs are not setting improvement goals. So you can see here that line, the average number of goals that a company has set is only 0.3. That indicates that most companies have not set any improvement goals. SDGs with the highest measures of engagement do not necessarily have the highest rate of improvement goals being set. An example here, Goal 1, no poverty, and Goal 3, good health and well-being, have some of the highest levels of engagement, but have lower than average rates of improvement goals. Similarly, Goal 16, they have one of the highest goal setting rates, despite ranking 12th in terms of engagement. This seems to indicate that some of the SDGs are more improvement friendly than others, which raises further questions to explore about what might make some SDGs more or less likely to be targeted for improvement. Another key insight from the improvement goals is that companies are more likely to set goals about internal operations compared to business models, supply chain, collective action, and risk. Again, this seemingly indicates that companies are more inclined to focus on shorter term, likely easier to implement improvement opportunities rather than those that are most impactful and strategic. All of these are just a few of the key findings and insights from the report. We also explore correlations between engagement, performance, and improvement indicators. For example, considering questions like, do higher levels of engagement tend to lead to more improvement? Are high-performing or low-performing companies more likely to set improvement goals? Beyond that, we also have some snapshot sections that Dan mentioned earlier that dive deeper into Goal 5, gender equality, and Goal 13, climate action, which I found really fascinating because we were able to pull in external data sources about gender equality and climate action globally and compare that data with SDG Action Manager data. I encourage you to explore the full report. I hope it provokes further thought and dialogue and action towards achieving the global goals. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Dan to close this out.
Thank you, Michelle and Charlie, for sharing these preview insights. So in summary, the report that we've put together makes reference to a lot of other external sources. And on the whole, our own analysis correlates broadly with the results that we've seen elsewhere, particularly on what is probably the most important aspect, that despite all of these different interesting insights and correlations and types of engagement that we see from companies, overall, the action and performance of companies is not strategic or bold enough to actually achieve the SDGs. Based on the performance that we've been able to see and analyze, individual company efforts need to go beyond what are the easiest and simplest places for them to make contributions, likely within what we refer to as their own internal operations, but to move towards the most strategic and impactful places they can contribute, likely including their value chains and their business models. And furthermore, they need to lend their voice, authority, and resources on meaningful collaboration and collective action to have impacts even beyond their own company and value chain. We believe it's also important to recognize the need to take a systemic approach to change, both within an organization and within the broader economic system. This includes embracing the concept of stakeholder governance, which requires the consideration of stakeholders in corporate decision-making rather than shareholder primacy as an enabling factor towards bolder necessary action to achieve the SDGs. Our report also recognizes the opportunity for further research on these topics. In addition to any deeper analysis that our own team might conduct, we certainly invite others to contribute to this dialogue through their own research. There is also research currently being conducted by academics with the data from the SDG Action Manager that everyone should stay tuned for as well. And so with that, thank you so much for listening. Please take a deeper look at the report, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you all. Thank you.